Welcome to the Global Professionals in Portugal show. My name is Cordelia, and today's guest is Nadine Bouchaud. She is a language coach and the founder of the Sprack Fox Online German School. Nadine, thank you so much for being here and for being our guest today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and how you ended up here in Portugal?
Of course. So I'm originally from Germany. I'm German, born and raised there, like very not international background whatsoever. But then I ended up during my studies being very international, where I also met my husband. He's a Belgian, but he founded his business in the Netherlands, which brought me then there. And I've been there for the last 6 years, I think. And then, yeah, we both, after a little bit of finding out what and where and how, I started dabbling into building something for myself, creating my own business. And we ended up both working from the laptop. So we didn't need any physical offices. He has his own business too. And so we considered, well, why do we have to deal with the harsh reality of the winter in Northern Europe? And yeah, then after a couple of detours, also exploring other countries like France, we ended up in Portugal because of the weather, because of just the nice surroundings, the nice living conditions. And yeah, here we are. We moved in the end of last year. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So now your business, the online language school, had you started that already before you moved, or did
Yeah.
you start that from Portugal?
I started it somewhere during the pandemic, like mid 2020. That was really the reason why things got into this whole move, because I suddenly was location independent. I have the business now in the Netherlands and I'm thinking of keeping it there. Just administratively, it's much easier. And it is going well. It's growing over the years. And here in Portugal, I just hope that, because yeah, the way of life is so much, it's very nice. It's less busy, less pushing than in the Netherlands. I think that will be very good for the business as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. So how do you find your clients? Is that
Yeah, online.
word of mouth or
So I've met so I had over the years more than 100 students, easy, probably more. And I've met only one of them in person so far. And that has
Mhm.
been actually a friend of my husband's who I took on, who I helped to improve his German. And I use platforms, international platforms. I use word to mouth. I use, those are the big things, and that you can do from everywhere. So yeah.
Great. So do you feel like you've adapted in any way your business since you've moved here?
Not really, because as I mentioned before, it has been already very, very international. I've been traveling before, working from different continents. So there is not really any like local influence. What I did adapt is because moving to another country where you don't speak the language kind of forces you to step out of your comfort zone. And it really allowed me to help my clients more and to understand them better, like where are the struggles, how hard is it really if you have to manage your everyday life and being abroad and dealing with another language. Those kind of struggles, of course, I can emphasize better now, and I think that definitely helped in my work. Yeah. Yes.
Everything you have to do is you have to process it.
Much more planning, much more like draining background processes that happen,
Mhm.
definitely. And I have to say, as an entrepreneur, I did wonder, for instance, if it was the smart move to have an additional like drain on the brain. I actually discussed it also
Mhm.
with my husband, because yeah, it takes away the focus from the business. But I do think overall it's better, because like choosing, like we are able to choose where we want to live, where we want to raise the
Mhm.
family, and I think in the long term it's gonna erase a lot of issues that would have
Right.
come up or that were there already.
Do you feel like you have had any challenges in terms of the continued operations of your business from being in Portugal, or was it just smooth sailing?
Well, my business is a continuous service. So I usually meet regular with my clients. I have them over months, years partially.
Mhm.
So the relocation process, of course, the moving, the whole thing, that did put a bit of a strain on it, I would say. So like figuring out the time and the time zone as well is a bit of a different one. That is definitely something that I would point out. I did have to look first also into, do I want to open a business here in Portugal, or do
Right.
I want to keep it in the Netherlands? So also there, in terms of like understanding the business practices, that was also, of course, something that we had to figure out. Because it's funny, I had a business also in Germany before I moved. And therefore I knew that it's not everywhere the same. And yeah, that's why I could make that informed decision where I wanted to be.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenging decision and really different for different businesses. But I know we're
Mhm,
looking at that as well because our business is based in the US right now. And
mhm.
we're like, should we? Because you can also open in like Ireland or Estonia. I mean, so there's so many options that it can be a little bit overwhelming. I think that you had a little bit of an advantage because you're already in the EU, you're already an EU
Yeah,
citizen. So there's some simplicities there from that non-EU
100%.
people don't have, so that's great.
Yeah, but even for EU people, I would say still research a lot, just
Mm,
because even though everything is very similar, there's still like the specific rules, and it's just from immigration purposes as well. For instance, like in other countries, or when I moved to the Netherlands, I didn't have to do anything with my driver's license. Now here in
mm.
Portugal, they want me to register it, and it's those little things that's just gonna make you
Yeah.
stumble. So.
I don't know if you've experienced this, but, once you get here, you're like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'm done now with the immigration process," but you're not. Like,
No, very.
there's
Yeah.
still lots of things to do after you move here, and have you been able to stay on top of those while you're still working?
Yeah, I had a huge help from my husband, I have to be honest. And I think we talked about this also in the previous conversation, but there is a big benefit of one of the partners is highly focused on the process, and the other person just like follows along and tries to
Mhm.
understand, but is not so involved, because he was the one who really dug deep into it. He looked up all the numbers we had to get, because they're like, I don't know, there's so many different numbers and certificates you have to have here.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was he was very focused on it, and then I just was like, okay, so we're done now, right? And he's like, no, we need this, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, in our family, it's me who does that, but I agree.
Mhm.
I think that and I have friends who immigrated to New Zealand, and they said to me, it's basically like a part-time job.
Mhm.
It's a lot of work. Even in the
100%.
smoothest immigration process,
Yeah,
there's so much to keep up with. And so
yeah,
I think that's a really good tip. Rather
yeah.
than trying to have everybody know everything, have one partner be highly focused
Mhm.
and just understand that that person is not going to be able to do 100% of all the other things that they would normally do because it's very time consuming.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why I'm saying very lucky with my husband and his business as well, because he works more project based, so it was easier for
Right.
him to like allocate the time. And I mean, there are people who make that their living, right? Who
Right.
help with relocation. So yes, it is definitely a part-time job. It's really diving deep into it. Also finding the right information, because there's of course a lot out
Yes.
there, and you have to figure out which applies to your situation.
Mhm.
And also ideally in a way that you're not like dapping in all the tourist traps, like where
Mhm.
they just charge you absurd amount of monies. And yeah, because that's the good thing. If you actually devote the time, you can find reasonable priced options, I have to
Mhm.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think that, there are great people out there that are
Hmm.
helping people, and
Hmm.
then there are people out there that are much more predatory, and so you definitely need to take your time to vet each vendor. Like, I had one vendor that I didn't fully vet, and that was the
Hmm.
one vendor that completely gouged the heck out of us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
part of it. It all worked out okay in the end, but,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't even say predatory. It's more like they make it their business, and if you're not willing to look into it yourself, then you got to pay for it, and you got to pay a
yeah.
lot.
Sure.
But I would also, as a tip, definitely say to try and benefit from group wisdom. So especially in Portugal, and I can honestly only say that for Portugal, but the Facebook groups, the communities of expats and also of locals that are just internationally minded, they are
Hmm.
amazing, and they really allow you to ask your questions, to find people who've been there before you, who where you can benefit from it. And then if you also, of course, participate in it, it's even better. So I would definitely, as a tip, give that.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. The other tip I would add on to that is learn how to search on Facebook groups, because a lot of people come in and they just ask their question and you're like, there's been 50 other people that have asked the same question. So take the time to watch a YouTube video, something on how to search Facebook groups so that you can see what has already been discussed.
Yeah,
And it's a great way to research vendors if you're looking at hiring a consultant to help you immigrate, or an
exactly.
insurance company or an insurance broker. You can just look their name up and see what other people have said about them. So I think the Facebook groups are amazing. And then you still need to understand how your situation is unique, though. Because
I know. I don't know if that exists if that was the case for you, but I noticed, having lived in different countries, there are country specific groups of people coming here. So it's like
Mhm.
very detailed. So there are the Germans coming to Portugal, there are the Dutch coming to Portugal. And in those groups, you also find information regarding your situation, which also might sometimes help with culture shock. Because I think we
Mhm.
haven't talked that much about it yet, but that is a part. Even though Portugal is a Western country, it's still a different culture, it's still a different
Mhm.
society, and you need to keep an eye on that. And sometimes it's just very helpful if people, even if they do the whole conversation in English, if they can just reference things that are
Mhm.
known to you, or if their mode of conduct is just something that is not surprising to you, or where you're like, do I understand that correctly now, or is there some code that I didn't get? Yeah.
Absolutely. Could you share a little bit about some of the cultural lessons you've learned since you've been here about Portugal?
Of course. So I'm German and I lived in the Netherlands. Being German for me doesn't necessarily mean very detail oriented or very punctual, but it means being very direct, being very coming to the point, being efficient. I think the efficiency is what I like.
Yeah.
And that's something that is not, I don't want to say it's not valued here, but the priority is not on the efficiency in communication. It's more on respect, politeness. And that's something I had to deal with, where I got easily frustrated because I just wanted a simple confirmation. And my counterpart tried to get us on common ground first. So they were not even paraphrasing me. That was just more explaining something that I already knew, where I was like, just my Germanness was like, come to the point. Don't got time for this. And that was definitely perceived as rude, 100%. And I wasn't even aware, because I didn't know about that difference. I assumed there was some kind of lack of information or something on the other side's part. And then I talked to a friend of mine who is also a culture coach. Like, she does intercultural
Hmm.
communication in a business setting. And she explained to me that it is a Southern culture and that there is quite a difference in terms of value. Also in terms of value of time, for instance. Like, time is a completely different concept here, which is interesting to get used to. And yeah, I think that is also something one should be aware of. Even if you would say you move from the US to Western Europe, it is a different society, a different culture.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to get better. One of the big things I've stopped doing is, because in the US, it's very common to email people like on the weekends, for example.
Hmm.
If I'm working with you, let's say we're meeting on a Tuesday, but I have a question on a Saturday, I would just email you. No,
Yeah,
I wouldn't even think about it. You
that's
may or may not
completely
get
fine
back
with
to
me.
me.
Yeah,
Right. Or you might just jot off, you might be sitting at your computer and jot a quick email. That is
exactly.
definitely not done here in Portugal. And not only that, but it's rude to email people on the weekend if it's not an emergency.
Hmm.
And so I have gotten in the habit of scheduling my emails, because I still want to do it when I'm thinking about it. So
Hmm.
I'll schedule it to send like Monday at 2 p.m. And then
Yeah,
I know that they've had a chance to come in, have their morning, have lunch, hopefully, or be at lunch, and then they get my email. But
Yeah.
that's just one simple kind of cultural difference.
100%. And I mean, I think here as well, so there's the cultural component, and then there's the individual component, as in you communicate with your vendors. For instance, for us, we, especially my husband, but me as well, like we like to move fast, like going
Mhm.
through the processes, getting our answers quick so that we can move further. And so we just communicate that also to our counterparts, to the people we work with, and also just ask, so this is how I work. I'm not meaning to offend you. If you don't have time, if you don't want to see it, just say I answer you Monday or something. Completely fine as well. But yeah, that is something one needs to keep in mind on.
I'm trying to get better about this, but
Mm-hmm.
I always ask people how they are. I ask if I know them. I ask how their children are. You take the time to have
Mm-hmm.
those
Mm-hmm.
relationship building conversations rather than just let's get right to the point. So
Yeah, something I still need to learn. 100%. Yes.
I have little prompts, and
Mhm.
I'll sit down sometimes, be like, okay, Monday morning, let me reach out to 5 people and ask them how their weekend was, or did they see their family, or, if they're a Portuguese friend or associate. I try to stay connected personally because I think that is really important here and worth taking the time for.
Yeah, no, I agree. In general, you are a new country, so you need to build a new network. So I agree, definitely. I have not done that personally, but maybe an interesting idea to do.
Did you have any issues with internet or kind of getting your home office set up the way that you want it?
Yes, we did, but that was more because we wanted a good offer. So we found a really good internet provider, but they were just starting out, and so they're not here yet, and therefore we needed to find another solution. I have to say, and that's really how I approach it. Sometimes it's okay to pay a bit more for learning lessons. So
Mhm.
like to have the budget to just be like, okay, in the beginning we pay a bit more, but otherwise my home office consists of my laptop, which I brought with me, and internet, but I also had the mobile hotspot from my phone contract, which is still the Dutch one. So I was able to take that
Mhm.
over. Again, within Europe, it's you have some benefits. You don't need to do everything from scratch. Yeah.
That is very helpful. Yeah, we paid an exorbitant amount of money to keep our phones active for the first few months here, so we would have full mobile hotspot, but it's ludicrously expensive to do that from the US, but that's okay. Like you said,
Mhm.
sometimes you just have to pay more for stuff, and that's just part of immigrating, and it's just part of the journey.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some things have you added, like a beach walk in the morning, or have you added some things into your day to help make your life richer since you've been here?
I have to say the sun makes it richer already. Like waking up, being able to see sun, because you have to imagine the Netherlands in the winter
Mm,
is dark. It's the sun goes down at 4, it comes up at 9. You don't even have a lot of snow usually, so it's just rain, wind, gray, cold, and it's a wetness that goes through everything. So here the weather, of course, has made a huge impact. And yeah, except for that, I have to be honest, not really, but I do think we are in the process of doing it. So we're in the process of like figuring out like restaurants, or apparently here in
mhm,
Portugal it's quite common to also eat out for lunch and those kind of
mhm.
things. So I think that's something that we will embrace more in the future. But
Yeah.
again, I'm trying to be gracious with myself and acknowledge that this is a process, even though I'm sometimes thinking, oh no, I don't know anyone, I don't know how everything works. Like I want this familiarity as fast as possible, but that's of course not possible. I think that's the most important thing as well, to give yourself time and allow for adaptation. Yeah.
Yeah, I sometimes imagine that I'm talking to a different person because I'll say to myself, like, why aren't I fluent in Portuguese yet? Why don't I have this figured out? And then I'll be like,
Hmm.
okay, I have actually only lived in a whole nother country for 6 months. Like, if a
Hmm.
friend of mine came to me and said those things, I would be like, you're doing great. But it does just take time, and you can't jump it. You just have to let that time unfold.
But that's what I mean with where I questioned from an entrepreneurial point of view if it was so smart to move, because it just those thoughts, those thought patterns that like come up,
Mhm.
they take away focus. So because in the country that you know, everything is familiar. You know
Right.
how everything works. You're 100% like there's no you can use your the energy for adapting, for daring something new in your business instead of completely having that in your surroundings. On the other side, again, it's now for a couple of months this process, but then later on it's gonna be much more rewarding. I'm sure of it.
I I love, even when I just drive somewhere here and I just look out the window, just looking at the countryside here brings me peace. It's so beautiful.
It is.
And so even though there's challenges, I just find that there's so much peace as well, so it's kind of, I think it counterbalances, right? On the one hand, you do have to constantly be like thinking about stuff, but on the other hand, there is
Mhm.
just this peace and safety and beauty around all the time, which I love.
Yeah, no, that I agree with you 100%. I try to then also look at what's nice, what's beautiful, and why this is worth it. And again, at the end of the day, it always comes out on top.
So now you and your husband are both location independent business
Mhm.
people. So did
Mhm.
you also work in the same space before you moved?
We both had offices previously, but they were much smaller, much especially for my husband, but also for my future business plans, they were too small. And that was also one of the reasons we moved to Portugal, because the prices are much more agreeable here than they are in Northern Europe, especially in the Netherlands, which is so densely populated. So it's
Right.
very hard to find a good house at the size that we need. So just because of that, it's not new for us to work like that, but having a proper office where you can have a proper setup, that's something new, and that's something I enjoy very much. Definitely.
I think that's a really good tip. It is important, like, it is important when you're moving as an entrepreneur, and especially if you're in an entrepreneurial family, that you make sure everybody has the space that they need.
Mhm.
And I think you did a really good job of that with your home. I think that's a really good tip. Whether you
Mhm.
have it in your home, there's plenty of collaborative office spaces here as well. So find
That's
some
true.
way so that
Yeah.
you actually can focus on your work.
I have to say that was also a reason why we liked Portugal so much. We've been here before for business conferences, and just the vibrancy of the startup scene was very important to us. To be in that, be surrounded by people that want to do something. Also, this international scene that you have, and not only in Lisbon, also the smaller cities. Like we
Mhm.
live now an hour north of Lisbon, and there is also a startup center here, startup hub that has co-working spaces that organizes events, and I think that's just very important to have a place that also where you also find your people. You find your
Mhm.
tribe, and yeah. So I completely agree with you. You need your space, and you also need your people, and you need the infrastructure. Mhm.
Absolutely. Are you starting, or you're somehow involved in a work community? Like you reached out and created that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I had that in the Netherlands, more female-based, female empowerment kind of group, and I really enjoyed it. I asked in the startup community if there is some kind of get-togethers like that, and I was informed they don't have it yet. And then I thought, okay, let's just see, because as I mentioned, the expat communities are a great source of help, but also just community. And therefore I created there just a little chat group, and I'm hoping to expand that now to set up a meetup. Actually, I want to start setting up something for the end of the month, maybe regular, bi-weekly, or once a month at least, just getting together like-minded people. I do enjoy like this female circles. I think there can be a lot of positive energy in that, but in general I think it's just very, very good to connect with people. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's a really good tip is, when you come here, is if there's some resource that you're missing, create it. and be willing to invite people and see what sticks. And I love that you did that. That's how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we
Exactly.
connected. And of course, I've started this podcast to try to meet other professionals here in Portugal. And I think that wherever you are, it's a wonderful thing to meet your tribe. And I love that about the community here. I think because a lot of people are kind of a fish out of water, then
Mm-hmm.
they're willing to kind of step out and be outside of their comfort zone and meet new people and have these kind of great communities. So I think that's a really cool thing that you started that.
Yeah, I also think, especially Portugal it's not super small country, but it's also not that big of a country.
No.
So going to another city for a day and just for an
Mhm.
event for a day is not a problem whatsoever. So I think that's also something that's good, because I feel like once you gain your familiarity, you're sometimes like just hanging on to it, but it's so rewarding to travel out a bit and meet new people. And
Absolutely. So now I have to ask you, because you're a
Mhm.
language tutor,
Yes,
could you give us some tips on learning a new language?
many people speak English, but if you really want to connect, you gonna at least try and make the effort, right?
Mhm.
Something that I think is important is you need, so I like that there are people who want to go self-study, and I think that's good because there is material out there, but I think it's very ambitious, and I'm not sure how successful to just go out and buy a book and try and do it yourself.
Mhm.
The problem is you will not have any support in correcting pronunciation, but also in when you're past that and you want to start building sentences, there's nobody who you can bounce it off with. So I don't think this is the best way. I do think that you need a little bit of a mix of things. So group courses are good to give you some kind of guideline, but you don't speak too much. So maybe, especially as a professional who comes here in the beginning, invest in a private tutor. I think that
Mhm.
could be very helpful just to get a hang of it to start. I think later on you can definitely also join group courses or intense courses in any way. I do believe in consistency, so do a little bit every day. That's much better than trying to cramp everything in, I don't know, 3 hours on Saturday. It's not
Mhm.
gonna help. Make it a regular thing and try and learn in everyday life situations, because that's when you need it. So, for instance, let's say you got started on Duolingo or one of the language apps, you have some words already and you're able to build the basic sentences. Yeah, so that should be fine within a couple of weeks or months to do. What you can do then is, for instance, when you drive, so you don't really do much, think of how you can say easy sentences, how you can use those words. Just try and practice with yourself. That already helps a lot, because that act of recalling the words just helps your
Mhm.
brain memorize it much better, right? And then another thing that's really good is when you live in the country, and that's something you can only do when you are surrounded by the language. So live in the country, you're gonna learn words every day just by seeing them
Mhm.
and just actively seeing them, actively using them. So like the pull and push on the door, or how they say, or the bathroom signs, or the menus, or the supermarket, right? Those shopping trips help a lot. And from that you can then build it up. Like for instance, you really like on the food packages, there's usually recipes at the back, right? Read them. Usually you know what they're making, so you can pretty much figure out, okay, this word is probably cutting, or this is like adding, or something like that. And by that you will in an everyday manner try to improve your language, right?
Mm.
And then once you've done that, and also when you already have some Portuguese friends and you feel like you could speak a bit, maybe try and speak a bit with them, ask them to correct you, things like that. But just, I really need to highlight consistency and not doing too much at once. So also when you ask a friend to talk to you in Portuguese for a little bit, limit it to 5 minutes or something, because you're going to be tired. Like you're going to be crazy tired afterwards, and the friend is, it's also tough for the native to help you along figuring out what you're
Mhm.
trying to say. So I think consistency a little bit every day, and a little bit of a guide on your hand, and taking the opportunities where they present themselves. Those are the big things for learning a language.
Those are great tips, and you gave me another tip, which I haven't had a huge chance to use, but I love this tip too, which is it's so easy. You get into a routine. You go to the butcher, you go to the grocery store, you
Mhm.
learn, I learn my little phrases. I can now say, hello, are you well, things like that.
Yes. Yes.
But your tip you gave me was, well, now take that conversation a little deeper. Like when you start to
True.
see the same butcher and you start to see the same people,
Mhm.
be like, how was your weekend? I consider myself a pretty confident person, but it terrifies me to try to do
Mhm.
that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, you can do this. You can do this, but
Yeah.
that was a really good tip that you gave me and that I'm going to be implementing. So,
Yeah, I think this is it's true. It's a good tip, but you know what you definitely need when you do that? You need those helping phrases. I call them like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Can you
mhm.
speak more slowly? What does that word mean?" If you have those as your backups, it's gonna be much easier because you know you can navigate those situations then. Also, something I think in a new language or in a new country, you might come find names that like because name is also something, right? Like very, it's always good to try and get into the pronunciation of the name correctly. Like ask the people how they want to be addressed, and I think that is something that people really appreciate, and that also gets you in touch with the language, right?
I love your story and I love how you are reaching out to other people, both Portuguese and international, growing your business. Are there any final like tips or strategies or lessons learned that you can share?
Mm, yeah, I think you really need to get this into this mix of like daring something new and still, yeah, keep it familiar. So like a little bit every day. I think that's true for language learning and for exploring a new country. And yeah, I think yeah, reaching out to people does make it easier, and then just go and try, I would say. Yeah.
Great, great advice. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for
And
having me.
thank you all for watching. And please like, subscribe, click the notifications, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time.